The camera drops onto the mat at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado. Padded floors absorb footfalls, while overhead cameras blink red in steady watch. An observation platform holds senior instructors and a safety NCO ready to call freeze at the first hint of trouble. Trainees in PTU move in a loose ring. Mouthguards seated. Rubber training knives tipped with markers held low. Commander Elena Brooks, a Navy O-5 and senior combatives instructor, who co-authored the NSWCEN Close Quarters Combat Manual, steps onto the center line. She wears a simple NWU Type 3 blouse without a belt or any hard gear. Sleeves rolled for freedom and safety. Her hands stay open. Palms forward. Stance relaxed but structured. The room quiets as the safety NCO shifts at the boundary and takes in her angle. Ethan Mercer grins as he edges closer, with Mark Jensen on his hip, while Dylan Hart and Chris Doyle, fan to the flanks, and Logan Price hangs back. They circle and snicker, treating the evolution like a prank rather than a measured assessment. Mercer lifts the marker-tipped blade and draws it across the blouse in a slow pass that leaves a stark black streak. No fabric torn. No danger given. Cameras catch the line as instructors keep hands down. Letting standards, not tempers, govern the floor. No one strikes the face. Grabs stay light and outside the boundaries set at the start. The safety NCO, watching for the moment that will justify a controlled response. Hold this picture and decide whether discipline outlives ego. The simulation hall at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado is built for controlled stress and clear oversight. Padded mats cover the floor, and modular door frames create lanes that can be reconfigured. Soft walls protect heads during movement, and mounted cameras record every angle for review. An observation platform holds senior instructors, while a safety NCO stands at the boundary, ready to call freeze. Issued gear for this evolution is simple and standardized. Trainees wear PTU with mouthguards and light training gloves. Each is handed a rubber training knife fitted with a marker tip that records contact and nothing more. No metal blades are present on the mat. Rules of engagement are brief and enforced. No strikes to the face or throat, and no unauthorized grabbing of uniforms. Maintain safe distance, unless a drill requires controlled contact, and obey freeze the instant it is called. On command, all positions reset, and movement restarts from a safe point. Commander Elena Brooks is a Navy O-5 and the senior combatives instructor who co-authored the NSWCEN Close Quarters Combat Manual. She is not a former SEAL, and her authority comes from current duty, technical mastery, and the chain of command. Senior instructors supervise every rep and log violations in training records. The safety NCO documents each freeze and any ROE notes. Candidates Ethan Mercer, Mark Jensen, Dylan Hart, Chris Doyle, and Logan Price carry the weight of washout pressure that can fray judgment. Some bias toward a female instructor adds to their edge, but it stays unspoken. The point of this evolution is not bravado. It measures composure, spatial awareness, weapon control, and restraint when the heart rate climbs. The energy on the Naval Special Warfare Center mat shifts from noise to something sharper. Ethan Mercer pinches the fabric at Commander Elena Brooks's sleeve and holds a breath too long. A small thing that reads wrong under bright lights. Mark Jensen slides the marker-tipped blade across her shoulder and leaves a second black streak that looks like a cut on camera but is only ink. Brooks breathes evenly. Hands open, weight centered over the balls of her feet. Dylan Hart and Chris Doyle start to creep into her flanks, keeping their chins tucked and eyes playful as if the drill were a game. Logan Price hangs back near the edge, watching like a spectator more than a candidate. The ring compresses by inches, not yards, and the soft walls feel closer than before. Overhead cameras blink and catch everything, while the observation platform stays still. The camera rides her breathing and the tiny shift of her stance as she squares her hips and widens her base. Her eyes track movement at the edge without a snap of the head. A quiet tell that she is mapping angles, not faces. She has not reacted because the contact is still low force and within the letter of the rules. The safety NCO waits at the boundary, ready but silent. Mercer closes to chest and plants the training knife too near the upper chest. Outside safe distance for this evolution. His other hand reaches for her blouse again, and that second touch becomes the precise trigger that breaks the spell. Senior instructors lean forward and still do not call freeze. Because control is about to be taught, not argued. What started as childish teasing now feels like a choice that breaks trust on the mat, and the next beat will set the tone for the rest of the class. The instant the rules are crossed, Commander Elena Brooks moves like a metronome, snapping to time. She slides a half step inside the threat line, and her forearm brushes the incoming wrist. Fingers close and capture the joint before the trainee can recoil. Her breath stays, even as the room seems to narrow to the space between two hands. She turns the hand with an outer rotation wrist lock that points the marker-tipped blade away from bodies. The strip is clean as the rubber training knife leaves the trainee's grip without a scrape. Hips pivot and the attacker's own momentum starts to carry him past center. Brooks guides, rather than forces, and keeps her shoulders square. The throw is a textbook shoulder placement that lands him flat across the padded mat. There is no snap to the neck and no weight driven into the head. She releases pressure as soon as contact is made. The blade is pinned harmlessly by her foot and then nudged aside. Her hands open to show control and distance returns in a measured step. The safety NCO is a statue at the boundary, ready to call freeze if speed or force climbs again. Senior instructors watch the spacing and the angle of her base. The room feels steady rather than hot. Everything fits the manual the candidates have been studying at the Naval Special Warfare Center. There are no strikes to the face and no belts or hard gear on the mat and no real blades in the hall. A small graphic could count 1.3 seconds, and the audience would feel how fast that is without hype. At the edge of the frame, 2 more trainees start to close. And the next lesson is already on its way. Mark Jensen and Dylan Hart slip in from offset rear angles as the first trainee hits the mat. Commander Elena Brooks reads them with peripheral vision and turns a quarter step to keep both inside her cone. Her lead elbow snaps a short path into the solar plexus of the nearer man for a controlled stun. Breath leaves his body and his feet shuffle back without panic or injury. She shifts weight to center and addresses the second line. A focused forearm bump targets the brachial plexus origin beneath the collarbone. The arm on that side loses strength for a heartbeat, and his posture folds just enough to end forward drive. Brooks does not chase him and lets space open so no one stacks into a fall. The rubber training knife, with a marker tip, remains in her hand from the earlier disarm. She rolls it from ice pick to standard grip to show control rather than threat. Chris Doyle enters late from the edge, and she paints an air slash near his forearms, without touching skin. A clear demonstration of where cuts would matter in real conditions. The blade never marks him and her offhand stays ready to manage distance. At the boundary, the safety NCO tracks angles and pace. Senior instructors on the platform watch spacing, footwork, and force with clipboards up. There are no strikes to the face or throat. No real blades. No belts or hard gear on the mat. And no joint hyperextensions beyond safe range. Brooks remains a Navy 05 senior combatives instructor and not a former SEAL. And every choice favors control, economy, and de-escalation, as the room feels both calm and intensely focused for the 3-man push that is about to arrive. Chris Doyle and Logan Price surge from opposite sides, while Ethan Mercer pushes off the mat and comes back into the lane. Commander Elena Brooks chooses angles instead of muscle and gives a small sidestep that lets Doyle overrun into empty space. A quiet shoulder check redirects him into Price's line and turns 2 bodies into 1 problem. Mercer reaches range and meets a clean inside trip that folds his base without twisting the knee. Brooks guides him down with hips low and a hand on the triceps so weight never rides the head or neck. She resets her stance after contact and clears her feet to avoid stacking bodies. The rubber training knife with a marker tip stays neutral in her hand with the edge turned away to prevent stray marks. She manages distance with open shoulders and keeps her offhand ready to post if anyone tumbles back into her lane. The safety NCO tracks spacing at the boundary, while senior instructors on the platform watch speed and angle and stand ready to call freeze if intensity climbs. Constraints hold through every beat. There are no strikes to the face or throat. No real blades in the hall. No belts or hard gear on the mat. And no joint taken past a safe range. The on-screen timer that began at 1.3 climbs to 8.0, as all three end up on the mat under control rather than punished. Brooks remains a Navy 05 senior combatives instructor, not a former SEAL. And the sequence reads as efficient problem-solving that lets tension drain into silence as the room recognizes that control, spacing, and timing just beat raw aggression. The call comes from the boundary, and the room obeys. Freeze lands like a brake on the Naval Special Warfare Center mat, and motion stops mid-step. Commander Elena Brooks drops the rubber training knife with the marker tipped to the mat, opens her hands, and takes a measured step back to show control. Senior instructors move in at a walk to re-establish spacing and breathe the tempo down. Candidates slide to the edge of the mat and sit with backs straight. Water bottles pass hand to hand, and a quick soft tissue check covers ribs, wrists, and shoulders. The safety NCO confirms no head or neck contact, notes the positions at the moment of the call, and keeps eyes on anyone still keyed up. Heart rates start to fall, and the air feels orderly again. Freeze is a standard command here, and it is logged every time. Training records capture the timestamp, the sequence, and any minor rules of engagement notes tied to this evolution. Brooks remains a Navy 05 senior combatives instructor, and she defers to the safety NCO, who owns the safety call from start to finish. Senior instructors manage the reset, update clipboards, and set the conditions for any follow-on training. Boundaries hold firm before anyone resumes. There are no real blades in the hall, no strikes to the face or throat, no belts or hard gear on the mat, and strict compliance with instructor direction is the norm. The difference between a brawl and a controlled demonstration settles in as the room tone goes still. Respect replaces adrenaline, and the class understands that order is not the enemy of intensity. It is the thing that makes learning possible. Captain David Harlan steps into the simulation hall, and the room lines itself by habit. He scans the black marker streaks on the NWU Type 3 blouse resting on the mat and notes the rubber training knife with its marker tip on the floor. His eyes move to the circle of candidates, and he asks who initiated unauthorized contact. Fingers point to Ethan Mercer, Mark Jensen, Dylan Hart, Chris Doyle, and Logan Price without a wordy scene. The senior instructors remain on the platform, and the safety NCO holds position at the boundary. Harlan addresses the class in plain terms that fit the place. Commander Elena Brooks is a Navy 05 senior combatives instructor who co-authored the NSWCEN Close Quarters Combat Manual they have been studying. The fact lands harder than any speech, and the room absorbs it in silence. Procedures continue even as the message sinks in. The safety NCO logs the freeze call with the timestamp and notes the positions and force level at the pause. Senior instructors record minor rules of engagement observations tied to this evolution and mark follow-up actions for remediation blocks. No one suggests that Brooks is a former SEAL because accuracy matters here as much as effort. Faces shift from bravado to realization, and posture changes by degrees. Breath slows, shoulders settle, and the simulation hall feels smaller and clearer at the same time. What they saw is reframed as a controlled demonstration delivered by the person who set the standard they are measured against. The floor waits for a short statement from Brooks, and the class understands that the real lesson is about to be spoken in calm words and steady timing. The class sits at the mat edge in the simulation hall, while senior instructors hold the observation platform and the safety NCO keeps watch at the boundary. Commander Elena Brooks stands on the center line in her NWU Type 3 blouse, a black marker streak across the fabric where contact was recorded. She is a Navy 05 and the senior combatives instructor who co-authored the Close Quarters Combat Manual these candidates study. Her posture is neutral, and her voice stays level as the room settles. She turns the moment into a lesson on disciplined force that fits the culture of the Naval Special Warfare Center. A blade only becomes dangerous in undisciplined hands, because control is what separates a demonstration from harm. Strength without restraint becomes weakness when it overrides judgment under stress. Ego without skill turns into liability the second the drill requires composure instead of noise. Trainees track her words to the mark on the blouse and picture how ink could have been something else outside a controlled environment. They see how spacing, grip discipline, and legal target areas kept the last sequence inside the rules. They note that senior instructors did not need theatrics to make the point, and that the safety NCO owned the pause exactly as the program requires. The lesson lands because it is specific, not because it is loud. Procedures remain intact while the cadence stays tight, like a field brief given between evolutions. Notes are logged, roles are clear, and no one confuses silence for weakness anymore. Breath slows as adrenaline gives way to respect, and the standard becomes personal rather than abstract. The room accepts that this is the line they are expected to meet before anything else moves forward. Captain David Harlan steps to the center of the simulation hall, and the class comes to stillness. He is a Navy 06 and the commanding officer of the Naval Special Warfare Center. He announces probation for Ethan Mercer, Mark Jensen, Dylan Hart, Chris Doyle, and Logan Price under the probationary remediation program. Counseling begins immediately, and remedial instruction blocks and performance reviews are entered into training records. Violations from this evolution are recorded as rules of engagement issues tied to time and sequence. The candidates will be monitored for professionalism and competence through scheduled evaluations. They face a possible roll to a later class or a trite if behavior or performance does not meet the standard. The intent is correction and readiness, not punishment for its own sake. Non-judicial punishment is not initiated here for clear reasons. The tool involved was a rubber training knife with a marker tip and the safety NCO called freeze in time. Reported injuries are soft tissue only, and the chain of command determines training. Remediation is sufficient while reserving the right to elevate if misconduct repeats. Documentation reflects this judgment and preserves options if patterns emerge. Roles remain precise in Navy culture. The safety NCO documents the freeze and associated notes. Senior instructors schedule remediation blocks, set evaluation checkpoints, and maintain the log. Commander Elena Brooks stays in place as the senior combatives instructor who will verify safe performance before anyone returns to full contact drills. The group accepts the decision without complaint, and posture settles across the room. The class understands that standards protect everyone on the mat and that the path back is clear. The tone is calm and procedural and fair. Accountability is the bridge to trust, and training continues when the standard is met. The room returns to movement with a quieter edge and clear intent. Commander Elena Brooks walks the line and checks stance, guard, and footwork while eyes stay on spacing. Trainees hold PTU, mouth guards, and light training gloves, each with a rubber knife that carries a marker tip for contact only. Her cue is steady, and the class mirrors her tempo. Pairs run controlled, disengaged sequences that a camera can read cleanly. Parry turns into wrist capture, then a safe release that restores distance without a scramble. A shoulder throw lands a partner flat on padded mats with hips guided and head kept clear. The brachial plexus stun appears once at low force as a brief stop, not a trophy strike. Senior instructors log performance from the platform, while the safety NCO watches angles and calls minor resets when lines collapse. Short replies mark etiquette with yes ma'am and I ma'am, and then the work resumes. No one reaches for speed at the cost of control, and each rep ends with hands open to signal safe posture. Notes go into training records while the floor keeps its rhythm. Every boundary remains in place without drama. There are no real blades and no belts or hard gear on the mat, and no strikes are delivered to the face or throat. Grip discipline keeps the marker tips from leaving stray lines, and posture corrections happen with one touch and a step back. By the time the block ends, the room moves with a steady cadence of breath and respect as the earlier snickers fade into a shared standard. The redemption drill starts on the Naval Special Warfare Center mat, with a calmer room and clear rules. Ethan Mercer stands as the designated defender while Mark Jensen approaches under controlled aggression guidelines. He announces intent in plain language: keep safe distance. and carries a rubber training knife with a marker tip for contact marking only. The safety NCO watches the lane, and the observation platform stays engaged. Commander Elena Brooks coaches with short, even corrections that keep the tempo steady. Parry becomes wrist capture. Then a safe release that restores space without a scramble. A quick balance check follows, and the choice is disengage rather than a takedown, which fits the lesson. Senior instructors log the sequence while yes ma'am and I ma'am mark etiquette and then fade into the background. Chris Doyle steps in for a second pass and almost crosses his feet on entry. Brooks cues a reset with a small hand signal and a breath count that pulls adrenaline down without anyone losing face. Spacing opens. Posture comes back online, and the drill resumes with cleaner lines. The marker tip stays honest and leaves no stray streaks. Boundaries remain solid from start to finish. No strikes target the face or throat. No belts or hard gear are on the mat. And no joint is taken beyond a safe range. The purpose here is composure, weapon discipline, and respect for the drill rather than spectacle. Heart rates level out, and Brooks gives a quiet nod that says the standard has been met for today. Commander Elena Brooks ties a simple knot in the stained sleeve of her NWU Type 3 blouse and steps off the center line. The mat is quiet and the room tracks her without a sound. Senior instructors finish their notes while the safety NCO watches the boundary and confirms the lane is clear. The energy is steady now, and the space feels like a place where work gets done. She pauses at the doorway and looks back once. The thought lands with the same calm she carried through every rep. You are here to learn, and the right time is now. A clean epilogue card follows in the mind of the viewer. Ethan Mercer, Mark Jensen, Dylan Hart, Chris Doyle, and Logan Price complete the probationary remediation program with consistent conduct. They roll to a later class, graduate after meeting every standard, and carry that day forward. They tell new candidates in plain words that restraint is not weakness. The narrator voice offers a gentle ask rather than hype. If you believe discipline beats ego, type the word steal in the comments and share this with someone who needs a standard to hold on to. Roles and procedures remain true to Navy culture, and nothing here claims that Brooks is a former SEAL. The last feeling is not adrenaline but quiet purpose. The sense that a clear standard is both demanding and fair.